All right, this video is going to go over discounts. Now, this is something that you see all the time in real life, so you are definitely going to want to know how do you find a sale price when you get a discount. So I want you to kind of think about, where do you see discounts? You see them in a lot of places. You might see them at a store. You might see like you get 25% off or 10% off. You might see it at a restaurant if you have a coupon. 10% off your total bill or 5% off. So you see discounts in a lot of places. So today I'm going to show you how you can actually find what's the sale price if there's a discount. All right, the definition of a discount is a decrease in the original price of an item. So discount actually means like you're subtracting an amount from what you're going to pay. So to find a discount, to kind of find your discount, we're going to set up a proportion. When you're trying to find like your final cost, what you're going to pay, so let's just let me give you an example. Let's say something costs $25 and your discount, let's say we figured it out, is $10. Well, to find the sale price, you're going to end up subtracting them. 25 minus 10, that might give you 15. Okay, so to find the final sale price, you are going to need to subtract, depending on which way you use. Okay, so again, this would be my original price. Here's my discount. That's like the actual amount. And then my final price, or my sale price, is $15. All right, but we're going to actually have to figure out, well, what is the discount first before we solve these problems? All right, one way to find discount is to use a proportion. I'm going to go through two different ways to use a proportion. So the very first way that you can think about it is if you're trying to find, well, what's the discount? What amount of money am I taking off the price I'm paying? You're going to need your percent of discount. That always goes over 100. We're trying to find, well, what's the discount amount? That's always going to go over the original price. So first thing that we're going to have to do is we're going to actually find the discount. Then we'll have to subtract whatever that discount is from our original price. That'll give us our final price that we have to pay. All right, so here we have an example. I have some shoes that I saw at the store, and they originally cost $75, but they're on sale for 30% off. First, I want to know, well, what's my discount? How much money am I saving? Am I saving $10? Am I saving $5? What's my actual discount? All right, one way to do this is to set up a proportion. All right, so first thing, it's 30% off. So I'm going to go ahead and put 30%, always goes over 100. My shoes originally cost $75. I'm trying to find, now this was my percent of discount, so here's my discount. They always have to kind of line up. If this is a percent of discount or 30% off, here's the money you take off. It always kind of lines up. So I'm just going to put an X there. All right, now you guys know how to solve this. I'm going to do 100 times X, which is 100X, and then 75 times 30, which equals 2250. Okay, my last step is to divide by 100. So I'm going to divide by 100. And I end up with X equals 22.5. Now this is money, so I'm going to put $22.50. Now that is not what you're paying for the shoes. That'd be a pretty good price for the pair of shoes. They originally cost $75. That is your discount. Again, discount, that word actually means that's the amount of money you're taking off. So I want to find, well, what's the price I'm going to have to pay? All right, well, the shoes originally cost $75, and if it's a discount, you're subtracting. So I'm going to subtract my discount, which was $22.50. That'll give me my final sale price. So 75 minus $22.50, I end up with $52.5 or $52.50. That is my sale price. All right, so here's our next problem. You had a coupon for 24% off your bill at a store. Weird number, but 24% off. You spent $64.20. We want to know what's your discount and then how much will you pay. All right, so to find your discount, let's go ahead and set up a proportion. I know I get 24% off my bill, so my percent's going to go over 100. Now remember, this is the percent that you're getting off. Okay, across from that, $64.20, that's 100% of my bill right now. So that's why I put it across from the 100%. 100%, that's 100% of the bill. I want to find what's the amount that I'm going to get off. That's called my discount. Remember, here's your percent off, so across from it is going to be the amount you're going to get off. So I'm going to grab my calculator. I'm going to do 6420 times 24, and I get 154.08. Oh, no, 1540.8, and then equals 100x. and then I'll divide by 100. So divide by 100, and I end up with 15.408. Now let's think about this. This is money, so you can only have 2 decimal spots. So it's going to end up being $15.40. This is higher than a 5, so round it up. So 41 cents. That's my discount. So again, discount is how much money you're taking off. So I want to know, well, how much will I pay? All right, so my original bill was $64.20. I have a discount of $15.41. So I'm going to subtract those to see what's my final that I will pay. And I end up with $48.79. Okay, here's another option that you can use with proportions. Now, if you get this way, you can use it. If not, don't worry about it. Just kind of watch one example, see if you understand it. So let's say that we have shoes that originally cost $75. They're on sale for 30% off. So in this way, instead of actually finding what the discount is, I'm going to just want to try to figure out, well, what do I pay right away? So let's think, if shoes originally, the original cost is $75, that's 100% of the price. Okay, so $75, that's full price, 100%. Now I'm getting 30% off. So if I'm not paying 30%, ends up I'm paying 70% of the original cost for my shoes. So I'm going to set my proportion up with 70%. So I'm going to put 70% over 100. Now this is the part I'm paying of the shoes. So instead of putting the discount there, I'm putting the actual percent I pay. I'm not paying 100%, I'm only paying 70% because I got 30% off. And then I'm going to put X over my original cost was 75. Okay, now since this is the percent I pay, this is going to be the new amount I pay. So if I cross multiply, I'll do 100 times X, which is 100X, and then 70 times 75. I end up with 52.50. Then divide by 100, divide by 100, and my final answer is $52.50. Okay, now that's not my discount this time. That's my final price. That's my sale price. And again, the reason I got that is because I said, well, I'm not paying 100% of the shoe price. I'm paying 70% of it. So this is what I'm actually paying, $52.50. Okay, another way that you can solve these problems is with an equation. So in this case, let's say I'm trying to find the discount amount. Okay, that's the same as a part. Okay, I know my discount percent, and I know the original price. That's the whole. So what you can do is I'm trying to find my discount amount. I want to know, well, how much money am I going to save? So I don't know that, so I'll just go ahead and put an X for my discount amount. Equals, I know I'm getting 30% off, so I'm going to change that to a decimal, 0.30, and then I can times it by the whole number. I'll put a dot there, times it by my original price, which is 75. So if I do that, I end up with $22.50. Now, again, that's not the price I'm paying. That's my discount, okay? Because this percent, that was my discount amount, my sale, the percent I get off. Okay, so now to find my final price, I'm going to do 75 minus that $22.50. And if I do that, I end up with $52.50. And you'll notice that's what we got on the last page when I solved it with a proportion. All right, so that's one way you can use an equation. All right, another option with an equation. And again, if you're not using this, you can basically, just go on to the next problem. But if you want to see this way, go ahead and watch it. So your second equation is going to deal with the percent you're paying again. So let's think about, okay, $75. That's 100% of the shoe price. Okay, now I'm getting 30% off. So really, I'm only paying 70% of the full price. So instead, I'm going to use that percent in my equation. So I'm trying to find the sale price. I'll call that X. The percent I'm paying is 70%, so I'll put 0.70. And I can times that by my full price, which is $75. So 0.70 times 75, I end up with $52.50. And that's my final price. That's my sale price. I don't have to subtract here because when I was working with this, I was already working with, well, what percent am I paying? So that's going to give me the price I'm paying. Okay, if you like that way, go ahead and use it. If not, you don't have to. All right, so our next example, it says Target is having a 15% off sale on shirts. You see a shirt that costs $28.50. How much are you going to pay? All right, so I'm going to solve this using a proportion to start with. So it's a 15% off sale, so I'm going to go ahead and put my percent over 100. Now remember, that's the percent I get off. Okay, it's a sale. So I want to know how much am I going to save. So that's going to be my X, and my original cost is $28.50. Okay, so I just set that up using a proportion. All right, now I'm going to cross multiply. So 100 times X, that's 100X equals, I'm typing in $28.50 times 15, and I end up with $427.50. Okay, and then my next step is to go ahead and divide by 100. So I'm going to divide that by 100, and I end up with X equals 4.275. Okay, now remember, this is money, so you can only have 2 decimal spots. You look at the next one. If it's 5 or higher, you got to round that up. So my final one would be $4.28. Now, that's not how much you're paying for the shirt. That'd be pretty cheap. You actually have to, that's your discount. So your last step is you need to take $28.50, that was your original cost, and take away your $4.28. Okay, so I'm going to type that in. And I end up with $24.22 is your final cost. Now, you could solve this one any of those other ways. You could use an equation, you could use a different type of proportion, but as long as you get this final answer of $24.22. Okay, I'm going to do one more. It says Carla's bill at the restaurant was $22.75. She had a coupon for 12% off. I want to know what's she going to pay. All right, so first thing, I'm going to set up a proportion. She's going to get 12% off. Okay, and I'm even going to put that there so I remember. And the percent goes over 100. Okay, her bill was $22.75. That's the original, goes on bottom. And I want to know what part is she going to get off. So remember, this kind of matches up. She gets 12% off, so this is going to be the money she gets off when I get my final answer. Okay, so I'm going to do 100 times X, which is 100X, equals $22.75 times 12, and I get 273. Okay, and then my last step, divide by 100. So I'm going to divide that by 100, and I get $2.73. Now remember, that's not your final answer. That's how much she gets off. So it's a sale, so I'm going to do $22.75, take away $2.73. Okay, I'm going to type that in, and I end up with $20.02 will be her final bill. So she ended up saving about $2.75 with that coupon. Okay, now I'm going to set it up one other way that you can use. So again, my bill was $22.75. That was 100% of the bill. And if she's saving 12%, let's go ahead and think. So $22.75, that's 100% of the bill. She's saving 12%. So if I do 100 minus 12, she's actually paying 88% of the full price. So I'm going to put 88%. That's what she's paying. That's the percent she's paying. So if I put X over here, that's the amount she'll pay. So if you like setting it up this way, then I'll do 100 times X equals, and then I'll do $22.75 times 88, which is 2002. And then I'm going to divide by 100. And I end up with 20.02. Now this time, that's not my discount. That's my final bill that she's paying. And the reason that is because I used the 88%. That's the part she's paying. So that's the part of the bill she's paying, 20.02. Now you could also solve this with an equation. So you can choose. I've showed you kind of a lot of ways to do these.